all the world's problems, but we're bringing people to the table. Spoony, food and fun. Follow Chef Patrick Mosher on Twitter at FoodBizPro.
Good afternoon. Happy Thursday, Spoony listeners. Chef Patrick Mosher, the Food Biz Pro here. Yeah, a little less than energetic today, perhaps. If you follow us at all, and you know myself and Doc Thompson, who does the hour before me with Doc Thompson's House of Flapjacks. Doc was our business partner here at Cuddle Me Buff, which we have a couple stations here that broadcast out of Fort Worth, Haltom City, Texas. Doc has been a long-time radio show host, and again, for the last couple of years, he's actually become my best friend. And if you're unaware, we tragically lost Doc in an accident. Okay, I'm going to say it like I feel. Doc was a dumbass, okay? I love Doc to death, but Doc went for a run the other day, and he had asked me to go. Unfortunately, I did not follow him because I would have followed him anywhere. But Doc went for a run the other day, and there's a stretch of railroad track here, not far from the studio, less than a mile. And I'm going to link this to my site and share it just, so if I seem a little distracted, I'm sorry. But Doc went for a run the other day, right before a meeting that we had on Tuesday. We have our monthly business meeting, which is one of our 4-week monthly board meetings. And he unfortunately fortunately, he had bought a new set of earbuds that he was very excited about. And these earbuds were the little wireless ones that go in, and he was sitting at the desk, and I actually took a really funny picture of him before he left, which he was wearing, his jogging clothes, but he had these granny glasses on. He was kind of looking over them a little bit to see what he was doing to link the headphones to his phone, and he couldn't get it. He was shaking. He had about 15 cups of coffee that day. Doc lives on coffee, protein bars and eggs like I do. I eat fewer eggs than he does, but so Doc got ready to go for a run, and he linked them, and then he put them in. He was so excited. He was like, "Yes!" Like a little kid did a little kick and an arm elbow back thing to kind of celebrate that were working, and they were way better than the earbuds that came with his fruit labeled phone. And anyway, so he went for his run, and he was in the zone, and he decided there's a stretch of railroad track there where it's elevated, and there's a space on either side of the track you can run, and because the ties stretch quite a bit wider than the track itself. Anyway, Doc happened to be going down a short stretch of track where you have to go up on the top of the track to cross a bridge, and unfortunately was struck by a train that was going through at about a very high speed, and he did not survive. So anyway, if you know anything about my show and Doc himself, we all had pet peeves, especially in restaurants. Everybody has a pet peeve in a restaurant. So if you go back and listen to the last show I did, which was last Thursday, I believe, last Thursday or Friday, if you go back and listen to the last live segment I did, yeah, the second hour, typically it's one stream, right? Doc does the first hour, there's a short break, and then I do the second hour. Well, I was asking what pet peeves were, what each person's pet peeve was that was on the show. And mine is that they all revolved around water glasses, actually, believe it or not. And mine is touching the top of the glass. Well, Doc's is that his glass, really, he doesn't ever want his water glass to be empty. The man's a freaking camel. He was a camel. And he never drank water unless we were dining somewhere or eating a meal. And he would even tell the server, "Look, just bring me 2 or 3 glasses of water instead of me having to wait." And they wouldn't do it. They would just bring him one glass, and sometimes they would take the glass away and refill it. So that was his one pet peeve. His biggest pet peeve in a restaurant is that his water glass was always full. So out of respect for him and in remembrance. Here you go, Doc. We'll always have a water glass full for you there. So anyway, I'm going to just post this to my site. I posted it to the Food Biz Pro page, but I didn't realize that was not my personal page. So I'm going to post this real quick. But, I was going to have a guest today who travel has trapped them in another city. That's actually Sean Paré, the corporate chef from Pregel, and Pregel is an amazing corporation that does some pre-made flavor bases. They do bases for gelatos and just a whole bunch of stuff. It's PREGELUSA.com, PregelUSA.com. But Sean is trapped in another city, and he's having to travel to Austin directly, I think, tonight or tomorrow. So he couldn't make it. He'll be on next week with us. But they have a phenomenal open house coming up. We're going to give them some publicity, so we'll talk about that next week. But in the meantime, as I post this, if I can actually remember to type and post it, safe, here you go. I'm just going to read it to you. Prayers and safe travels, Doc. All right, at Doc Thompson. And next time, why don't you take the bus? Okay, a little bit of sixth sense of humor, but Doc would have gotten it. He was a really, really, really funny guy, and if you've listened to him or ever known anything about him, he's a pretty great guy. So share to my timeline. I want to make sure it goes to the right place. Public. Okay, there you go. All right. So if you are watching, you're listening, if you would do me a huge favor, if you would go to the my Patrick Mosher homepage, it's just Patrick Mosher. There's no chef or anything like that. You can go to Food Biz Pro homepage, or you can go to the @Spoony Radio on Facebook. We put up a GoFundMe link for his family, and he has a lovely wife, Una, who is actually a news anchor in Northwest Arkansas. She was the one that introduced us, actually. She has, they have 3 children. They have a Tiger who's, I think 17, and a young man. They have 2 younger children, much younger, Cubby and wife. And they, we are making sure that they are taken care of. So if you would follow that link, actually, I'm going to look it up here and just make sure everyone knows what it is, because it is. All right, so if you go to GoFundMe, the page is, GoFundMe Doc Thompson. I'm sure that it's right here somewhere. What's the link, Ron? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. It's GoFundMe.com /Doc-Thompson.
Okay, Doc Thompson, and it's THOMPSON.
Okay. Yep, Doc-Thompson.
Yep. And so far, we set a 20. Like, I have to tell you, I have to say thank you to all Doc's fans, friends of the Spoony radio station, and anyone who knows me who was kind enough to donate. We set a goal yesterday. We did a long broadcast yesterday. We do 7 hours of live broadcast a day. In-house from our sister channel, which I know we're not supposed to mention it, but I don't care of your political leanings. It's called Mojo50, MOJO50, the number's 50.com, or Mojo50 Radio on Facebook. But Doc was our visionary as far as that goes, and it's libertarian, conservative talk radio. But Doc was an amazing guy, and his family needs our help. We set a goal of $20,000 yesterday, and thus far, by 2,164 people in just over 24 hours, we've raised. You have raised $108,757 for his family, and for that we're grateful. Also, tonight, I believe Fox News is picking up the story, and they are going to also direct people to that page. Doc was a 30-year veteran of radio. And has been a national talk show host for at least. Well, I know he was with one local. He was with the Blaze here in Irving, and he was there 7 years. So, but prior to that, he had other talk shows as well. But anyway, Doc touched a lot of lives. And when I first met him, actually, his lovely wife Una introduced us, and this is how the story goes. I was in Northwest Arkansas with a great friend of mine, Barry Furaseth. If you've ever listened to my show before, he's better known as the fish guru, Barry the fish guy, out of the beautiful oceanfront town of Bentonville, Arkansas. Not. So Barry is from Minnesota originally, and fascinating background. Grew up on the reservations in the lovely land of lakes. His father was a superintendent of schools. I think his mom was a teacher. Barry, if I'm wrong, correct me. Anyway, Barry and I became very good friends. He was my fish vendor in California. I was at Universal Studios. At that time at Universal, I was running a place called Gladstone's, which, if you know anything about Gladstone's for fish in Malibu, it's one of the largest, most successful, longest-running restaurants in California that's in that area. Anyway, long story short, I was executive chef there. Barry just walked through the back door one day, and he's like, "Hey, man, how you doing? Who's your seafood vendor?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just started. Like, who the hell are you?" Basically. So Barry comes in, and he brought some great samples, and he told me what he could do price wise, and so I tried them out, and ended up buying about $1 million in fish a year from him there. And as we grew, I went into other businesses. I became a private chef there for a very wealthy family. He followed me there, and I continued to provide him contacts. He continued to provide me with great seafood. I mean, just amazing. Anyway, Barry, a few years later, I moved to Houston, and Barry and I had another business together after that. That was a seafood import company, and we did value-added fresh and frozen seafood. And we also help facilitate other businesses that were looking for products, not just seafood, but other agricultural products from South America, and also teaching those growers how to sell food, a commodity produce item, as a value-added item. So instead of just plain old fresh mangoes, we taught people with a small investment to buy the correct equipment and help them procure and secure contracts so they could sell like IQF 1-inch chunks of items like mango, such as for Trader Joe's and things like that. So Barry, long story short, we did that. Our partnership didn't fall apart. We dissolved the company, and I focused on other things. Barry did as well. He moved off to Arkansas, of all places, to Bentonville, Arkansas, where he had some family members. I'm making a very short story a little long because A, I'm filling time because I don't have a guest, and B, I think it's just good history about me and also about how Doc and I became affiliated. Anyway, 7 years later, I believe, or 8 years later, Barry calls me and says, "Patrick, it's time." I'm like, dude, are you drinking? What the hell are you talking about? It's time. I haven't spoken to you. We didn't speak for a long time just because we were busy doing other things. But he said, "Dude, it's time. You ever been to Northwest Arkansas?" I'm like, ding, 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 ding. No, I haven't. And that's from Deliverance, by the way. Look it up. He's Barry says, "Dude, this place is unbelievable." He goes, "I've hated it. It's just backcountry, slow, nothing like LA. But all of a sudden, things were booming." And for those of you who don't know what Bentonville, Arkansas is, it is the home of Sam's and Walmart. And that's where Sam Walton made his home, and his entire family lives there for the most part. And he built his empire out of that city. It's not where he originally started. He had a store in, I believe, Missouri was the first store that he had. It was another chain, another brand. But as he founded the Walmart brand, and then later Sam's, he built that empire there. And it's a fascinating history. It's a great piece of American entrepreneurship, which fascinated Doc as well, which we'll get into. And so anyway, he said, "Look, dude, you got to come up here." So I did. I packed up. I went up there, took a visit, and went up for another visit. We actually met in Colorado, did some work, and 4 months later, this started in October, and by February, I'd moved to Bentonville, Arkansas, and we were opening a company. And of all things, in this landlocked state of Arkansas, we were opening a seafood market. So that's not a bad thing. I mean, it was a food desert as far as that's concerned. The nearest place to buy from downtown Bentonville, which has a population of somewhere at that time around 40 or 50,000, the nearest place was, I don't know, at least 8 or 10 miles if you wanted to buy a lobster, and you were lucky if they had live lobster, or at least maybe not that far, 5 or 6 miles anyway from downtown. And if you wanted a real seafood market, anything larger than that, you had to drive to Fayetteville, which is about 30 miles, I believe. So it was kind of a wasteland as far as that's concerned, as fresh seafood. But Barry, being a seafood expert and having been in seafood sales for a long time, he knew it was time. And there was a quarter there where they were developing this new shopping district. The Market District is what it's called. And they were looking for people to to put their own money in and be the first to invest in that development and advancement of that community. Now, Bentonville on its own, even prior to that, is not an uncultured community. They have one of the best hotels I've ever been to with an amazing chef, Matt McClure. Chef Matthew has been, he's a multiple year recipient of James Beard Best Chef, I believe Southwest or South. He's been nominated several times. I don't think he won. I know he's been nominated at least twice. Amazing young man, amazing chef. And then also they have, besides all of that culture on the food side of things, which there's some great restaurants in Bentonville Square and also around the entire area now, but they have one of the most amazing museums in America, which is called the Museum of American Art. And actually, if you go back and listen to our last broadcast, which was live, I believe last Thursday. No, it was Friday. Was it Friday? Might have been Friday. Anyway, go back and listen. It was, we spoke about it. The Museum of American Art, being from New York, which has the most amazing museums in the world, at least in North and South America. This particular museum, which was founded by Alice Walton, Sam Walton's daughter, and funded I want to say in part, but mostly by private money from the Walton Foundation and other funds that they had raised. It's a phenomenal facility. It's one of the best museums I've been to, and if you haven't been there, make the trip. If you're in the DFW area, Dallas-Fort Worth, it's about a 5.5-hour drive to Bentonville. If you're in other parts of the country, you can fly there. XNA, which is the airport in Bentonville, Northwest, I think it's Northwest Arkansas Regional Airport, has an amazing, very small and easy to navigate airport, but they have it's over 200 flights a week in there from all over the country, and tickets might not be cheap, but if you buy them in advance, they are. Phenomenal area. So this museum is nestled in kind of a natural recess that's between these hilly areas. It's kind of nestled in a creek bed, so to speak, but it's over the wellspring, the spring head that feeds the creek that runs through town. It's just beautiful, and they have all these biking trails and walking trails around there. The Walton family, in particular, I believe it's Alice's sons, Stuart and Tom Walton, have done a great job because they're huge bikers, bicyclists, mountain bikers, and road cyclists. That they have done a great job in growing the trail system there. Anyway, all this stuff aside, the museum's fabulous. You have to go, and it's an amazing museum. It's not just amazing; it's free of charge, unless there's a special exhibit, which is very reasonable. So we were speaking about this, and so I was thinking back about that and how this whole thing happened. And so my one of my former best friends and business partners, and he's still a very close friend, Barry Furseth, invited me to Arkansas. I agreed. We started this company. It's called Blue Fresh Fish Marketplace. That's BLU, Fresh Fish Marketplace in Bentonville, when there's a seafood market and a restaurant. And since my departure, which was several years back, I believe 2015, he's expanded it. They have a sushi bar now, which was part of the plan because I specialize in Japanese food. But a phenomenal facility. So I departed. I had a knee injury. I had to part ways. I had surgery. But through that, I was hired to reopen another restaurant. There's a fantastic classic. So the Museum of the American Museum of Art in Bentonville is also called Crystal Bridges, right? But it is Crystal Bridges, the Museum for American Art. So anyway, thanks Brittany for the reminder. I was hired by a couple of wonderful owners of Fred's Hickory Inn, which was the first fine dining restaurant in Northwest Arkansas. And by the first, I mean way back when. As a matter of fact, the original smokehouse, which was founded by Fred, I'll think of Fred's last name in a minute, was built there in the, I want to say 64, 65, somewhere in that. I wasn't born until 67. It might have been a little prior to that, but I believe the restaurant opened in 68. And Fred's Hickory was pretty phenomenal place. It started out again as a smokehouse. Fred was a retired, I believe, petroleum engineer who had this passion for smoked meats, like having this smokehouse. And he had a smokehouse where he sold meats to passerbys and regular clientele and customers. And then he built this restaurant. Well, the restaurant was, they started, basically, he constructed, the original structure that was there was it was a camp. And there was like a log cabin, which was the original structure, which was, I believe originally the dining area for the smokehouse. And then it became the bar to the attached restaurant. And the attached restaurant, I think, was the bunkhouse, or it could have been the cafeteria. I don't remember. But anyways, someone will correct me on the history. But fascinatingly enough, Fred would add on to the restaurant on occasion by taking, okay, Fred was a character. Fred had this cane, and this cane was as beautiful. It looked like this ornate, lacquered, it almost looked like it was made out of cattle horn. But it was not. What it was I want to say it was made out of a bull's penis. So it really was. And Fred was quite a character. He was a character. He's an old timer. So, he did what he wanted. Anyway, what he would do is he'd take his stick out there as he expanded the restaurant, and he would basically trace a line, trace a box, the size that he wanted to expand the restaurant, because he knew how many seats that would be, and the contractor would expand the restaurant for him. And he did that several times over the years. And so the original restaurant, which I never had the good fortune of entering, right? When I got to Bentonville, it burned down, I believe, in October of 2014, which is right before I went to Bentonville. I moved there in February rather of 2015. So anyway, Fred would draw a line in the sand. He'd draw the outline of the structure, and they would expand the restaurant. Now they did this several times, I think 3 or 4 times at least, which meant the pieces of the building, the new structures, didn't always line up exactly. And got to turn these around because that's going to choke me. I'm clumsy and I might choke myself to death. I'd hate to follow the path of Doc and just have a bad day and be stupid. Or not cautious anyway. So anyway, he would draw a line in the sand, and they would expand the restaurant by that area in square footage, and that happened several times. And I'd seen the pictures from the interior, and it's very interesting how the restaurant ended up. They had this kind of glass enclosed catwalk, which went from or kind of ramp that went from the main restaurant up into the bar, which was the log cabin. And anyway, crazy design, but again, was an iconic restaurant in Northwest Arkansas. So that restaurant burned down in October 2014, and the owners I had met, actually Barry and I had planned on opening a sushi bar up there. They had a gas station. Randy Lawson and Dick Mahan was one of the other owners, longtime residents up there, and very successful and business people, mentors of the community and pillars as well. Very, very wonderful men, and their wives as well, their respective wives, and their entire organizations. I went to Randy Lawson with Barry, and we made a presentation. He had an abandoned gas station, or unoccupied, which is an old, just kind of cinder block shell. But we thought it would make an amazing restaurant because it had this big storefront window, like a big glass window, which would have been perfect as a view into the restaurant. But even better than that, in the old service bay, it had this big lift, hydraulic lift, which would be perfect if it were table height with a glass, wood supported. It would be supported on the original lift, the metal lift for the automobiles, but with a wooden frame around that, and then the table on top. That would have been perfect for private parties. So. All right, so we got about 30 seconds left. I'm going to finish the story here in a minute. But again, this is Chef Patrick Mosher, the Food Biz Pro. If you haven't heard, my best friend, my life partner, so to speak, as he said in one of our great promos, was tragically taken from us the other day. And if you'd like to support his family, you can go to GoFundMe. I believe it's /Doc-Thompson. THOMPSON. And again, I'll spread that out over the social media. And please support his family. Please donate if you can and what you can. Again, we're going to take a short break here in a few seconds. I'm just telling the story how we met and what a fascinating and amazing creature he was. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining us.
Dating today with all the crazies out there has to be nuts.
Yes, it really would. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a place you could go to find people who think like you do?
Like me, like libertarians and conservatives?
Right?
There is. We the people .dating.
Amazing. What a genius idea. This is a site that you can go to if you're single and you are looking for somebody who you know you're going to think the same way, as for from a political freedom standpoint. If you want to date the right person for you, you'll find them in one place. WeThePeople.dating.
Take the pain out of ordering your diabetic testing supplies with Diathrive. Diathrive ships the testing supplies you need directly to you when you need them. Best of all, with plans starting as low as $8 a month, Diathrive is probably going to cost you less than what you're paying today. Diathrive is so convinced that you'll love their service, they're offering your first month of supplies free. Simply type the code DOC, D-O-C, at checkout. Diathrive.com. That's D-I-A, thrive.com.
It looks like you're losing.
I am.
Are you losing weight?
I am losing. I've lost about 10 pounds.
How are you doing it?
It's a funny name, but I've done it with Riduzone, RIDUzone.com, and the stuff works. It's, you get into all that, the molecule this and the found in that. All I can tell you is it makes you feel full, and it keeps your mind off of wanting to overeat.
And also boosts your metabolism,
Yes,
so you're
it does.
burning more.
Yeah, it does.
Try it today. It's going to work for you like it's worked for Brad and countless other people. Riduzone.com, RIDUzone.com.
Never Forgotten Apparel is more than just a premium women's and men's clothing line. It's a movement to remind us to wear American-made and serve those who serve us. Our heroes. Never Forgotten Apparel gives 20% of their total sales to nonprofits that support homeless veterans and off-duty firefighters, and 50% to individual veterans and firefighters in need nationwide. Check out neverforgottenapparel.com. Use promo code MATT, M-A-T-T, and get 15% off your purchase.
Follow Chef Patrick Mosher on Twitter @FoodBizPro.
Good thing I kept my mouth shut during the break and didn't say any F-bombs there because I forgot to mute the mic. Oops. Oh, there we go. That's how that thing
right.
works.
It's not like he makes a habit of that, folks.
No, never. Yeah. It's funny. After all the years in radio, we were joking about this yesterday, actually. Doc often forgot to unmute the mic. And it's funny because Doc was a kind of guy. He had a lot of allergies, right? So he would instinctively always... And he'd come back in like that, but he would forget to unmute the mic at the beginning of the show. Kind of funny. Anyway, if you're just joining us, Chef Patrick Mosher here. I may be the face of Spoony. Doc was definitely the voice of Spoony. I'd like to say I was the big dog, and I'll say something that. Yep.
Patrick, let me throw something in here real quick.
Yes, sir.
We have about 23 people watching us on Facebook right now, which is a big number for us.
Yes, it is.
We want to say thank you. Thank you for coming over and listening to Spoony. You guys, keep an eye on this station. This station is going to get huge. We've got a great show tomorrow morning. Trey Chapman, I know you're going to talk about that, but we've got a lot of other stuff coming. So if you're a foodie or you want to be, this is where you got to be. Thanks.
Yeah, so you mentioned Trey Chapman. We'll talk about. I'll save at least 5 minutes into the show because we have some big names and some great shows and some loyal partners that have really helped provide content for no cost to Spoony, and now they're getting a chance to have their own voice. So stay tuned to the end of the show. And again, you know what? We are new. Spoony is an untried and untested format. No one's ever done 24 hours, 7 day a week food talk radio streaming. Food talk radio. No, we're not all live all day, but by the end of next week, I believe by next Friday, we should have about 6 hours of content fresh every day. And I'll have by then 8 weekly shows. So somewhere in that area, at least within the next 2 weeks, we'll have 8 to 10 weekly shows. And then we'll have minimum 3, probably 4 live shows a day that are, I'll be to 2 hours by then. We have another, and then yeah. So anyway, it's a bunch of hours coming up. Stay tuned. So I was talking about what had we lost our big pair of shoes here. Doc Thompson, 6'5", big voice, giant heart, gentle soul. The other day, tragically, and so we're just talking about how Doc and I met. So Doc, again, I was working at this restaurant, Fred's Hickory Inn. We had I had tried another venture with the owners, Randy Lawson, and I'd approached Randy Lawson specifically with my former business partner Barry Furiseth to open a sushi bar, and it didn't work out. We just couldn't do that. We couldn't get it right. The funds didn't work out. We couldn't provide the numbers, and we had to walk away from the deal and allow him to take an offer that worked for him. A few months later, though, after I had my accident and I had knee surgery and I had to depart, and by the way, if you haven't shared this video feed and recommended it to your friends and family and anyone you know, your coworkers, if you own a company, please make it part of your corporate policy that they listen to Spoony Radio and watch the Facebook live feed every day, at least between whatever hours your lunch break is. I would greatly appreciate it, and we'll pay you when and if I can, at least in a thank you by mentioning your company on air by name. Not really, unless you tell me to. I won't know. But if you would share this, we have a great passion for food, family, entrepreneurship, and most of all, having fun. So anyway, I was working at the restaurant, Fred's Hickory, and it had burned down. And I specialize in opening restaurants. I'd done it many times, and a few things had happened with the restaurant when they reconstructed it. It was beautiful, by the way, and they had leveled out. The floor was all one grade. They had refined and aligned the kitchen, made it streamlined and very beautiful. They'd done an amazing job. They'd put a lot of money into this restaurant, and they want to get their money back out, and I don't blame them. So the great general manager Greg Cockram, who is now the general manager at, I believe, River Inn in all right, Bentonville River Grill. That's it. I knew it before I pulled it up, but yes. So River Grill Steakhouse in Bentonville, phenomenal restaurant, by the way. He's there now, but he was the GM at Fred's Grill. Yeah, that's it. I knew it before I pulled it up. That was funny. I could hear me. Yeah. So Ron's in there like, you could hear that? I'm like, yeah, that was cool. I never listened to myself. I never re-listened to my podcast. So it's odd when you hear yourself on. I hear myself live in the earphones is one thing, but hearing myself replayed kind of freaks me out a little bit. Like I'm eavesdropping or kind of somehow spying on myself. So I don't listen. And plus, I don't want to know if I sound good or bad. I just want to improve by hearing what others say. It's not about me. So anyway, I was working there. It had burned down. They hired me to help oversee the operations as the executive chef, finish the build out, help hire and retrain staff or train staff that was new, and learn who they were and to kind of do what I could to help maintain their image, and if I could improve anything, wonderful. So I believe I was brought on in August or so, September. We opened in right after Thanksgiving, I want to say. And I must tell you, I've done a lot of openings, and I always recommend never, ever, ever open around a holiday. Unless you do what's a super, super soft opening where you open like on a Tuesday, 2 weeks before the holiday, but you don't tell anyone and you just kind of let it flow. But what we did is we did 2 opening nights where we had an awful lot of people coming in. So we gave everyone time slots, right? And it was, I think it was about 300 people, and they were supposed to come, between 5 and 6, and then 6 and 7, 7 and 8, and everyone came around 7 o'clock. Of course, every table was full, and it was ugly. It wasn't just ugly because everyone showed up at the same time, not when they were supposed to be there, but because our POS system, which typically stands for point of sale, in this case, it stands for piece of shit, went down. And so, not knowing what to do, the kitchen came up with a plan to just handwrite tickets and hand it to us. Well, okay, that's fine, except if you have items that come up off different stations, we don't have a duplicate copy for those stations. So what we did is we had a limited menu that night, and Fred's was famous for their steaks. And another very, very phenomenal item that Fred had come up with, that was their smoked sirloin. They take a whole sirloin butt, which is, between, I don't know, it could be anywhere from 9 to 15 pounds. It's a big piece of meat, and smoke the whole thing. And then it was sliced. It could, a number of things. It was shaved for like a roast beef sandwich, which was unbelievable, so tender. And then also it could be cut into steaks, and the steaks were, depending on the size of the sirloin, could be anywhere from 1/2 inch to 1 inch thick, depending on the size that you ordered. Unbelievable product, and the smokehouse had been there forever. It was the second. They had a custom built pit, which had only been there, I think, since the 70s or so, but it was not the original pit. Anyway, as the night went on, what we did is we just started cooking steaks, and what we did, we would cook 10 rare, 10 mid-rare, 10 medium, 10 medium well, and then anything well we just finished off to order. And what we do is people would come to the window, we'd say, how many steaks, what temperature? And we'd just plate them to order, throw them out the window. Believe it or not, we had about 100 people, maybe 150 people all at once waiting for food that had not gotten any food. And in a matter of, we were probably 200 people in the weeds is what we say, behind. We got all that food out of the window in like 40, 45 minutes. It was unbelievable. Just simply cooking and plating, not taking any order. We just cooked steaks, stacked them up by temperature, and plated them on the grill, on the plates. Sent them out the window. And then the other stations did what they could to keep up, because the smoked sirloin wasn't a problem. You don't have to cook it. It's just held warm in a hot box, and you just cut the steak to order, and it's served, right? And it went on the plate with a baked potato and whatever the veg was. You were done. Anyway, so we made it through the night. The opening afterwards, it went very well. We refined the systems, we discovered some of the issues that we were having, which is that the refrigeration space was smaller. The dry storage was slightly smaller. The kitchen was the same size, but was configured differently. But the seating area was almost twice as much as it had been in the past. And so we arranged some equipment, and we got it all lined out, and it worked fine. All right. Prior to all of that happening, the grand opening, that is, and if I've missed anything or any wonderful people that were involved, I'm sorry, Sean, the kitchen manager. He was integral in opening. He came back post opening, but I believe he's still there and running all the prep. He's a master of Fred's Food. He'd been there for a very long time. Pre-opening, the local news channel, which is 4029, and I want to say that they are I don't know which affiliate they are, but I will tell you in a second. I believe they're ABC. I could be wrong. They are, not 4019, Chef Patrick. Northwest Arkansas, KHBS. Is a local. Yes, I'm that slow, folks. I don't know. It's not showing me. Anyway, it's one of the local affiliates. It's a national broadcast affiliate. So it is.
I think it's NBC.
I think it's. Oh, you're right. It's NBC. Okay. Okay. It's one of those days, folks. Anyway, so Una is his wife's name. Una Lee came to the restaurant, and she they did like kind of the pre-launch publicity for us. She came in with a cameraman. They filmed me cooking in the kitchen, doing my blah blah blah. That basically one of the big things I do remember saying is that all I know is that if I change the menu too much, the owners will not just fire me, but the locals will string me up. And if not run me out of town, then they'll string me up, because Fred's was an iconic restaurant, and you could not change the food very much. It was a destination restaurant. Everyone went there for every major holiday celebration, you name it, and it was a big deal. So we got through the opening, blah blah blah. Things happened, and Una had done this coverage for us, and then she said at the end of the interview, she said, "You know what? You really must meet my husband. I think he'll really like you. I think you'll get along very well." And I was like, "Okay, whatever. Okay, cool. Hopefully we'll meet." Well, about a week later, she texted saying, "Hey, we really need to get together for coffee. You need to meet my husband. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. Thanks. And this went on for like a month, 6 weeks. I don't know. And then one day, they came in. We had a tasting at the restaurant, and we had a wine tasting. And I was just bringing out some bread and some other snacks to have between each taste of wine. And so Una and her husband Doc were invited. And so they showed up, and I was introduced. I said, "Hey, Una, how are you?" She goes, "Oh, this is my husband, Doc." And I said, "Oh, hey, Doc, how you doing? Nice to meet you." He goes, "Hey, how you doing?" He was exhausted. It was like 8 o'clock at night or whatever, and exhausted. Why, I didn't know. He looked tired. And I said, "Oh, what do you do?" He goes, national talk show host, blah blah blah. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'm a cook, so I'm going back to the kitchen." That was the extent of our entire conversation. I was like, "Okay," but I remembered him. He was big, tall. Doc was around 6'4", 6'5", I think, and a few times, I got text from you, "Hey, we still need to have coffee." I'm like, "Okay, great." And then finally, I'd gotten a text from her that said, "Hey, this Sunday after church, let's go to Onyx Coffee Lab," which is a very cool place if you've ever been to Northwest Arkansas. The original store is in Fayetteville, and then they built this beautiful facility in downtown Bentonville. Gorgeous place. And if you have the chance to go, they have, 16 ways to Sunday to brew coffee. Cold brew, nitro. They have, hot, regular espresso, and then they have pour over coffee and blah, 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 drip this and drip that. But anyway, phenomenal coffee. I drank only decaf for the most part, so it didn't really matter to me. Hand me a cup of decaf, I'm happy, right? Anyway, so we met. And we had some pastries, and we had coffee, and Doc walked in, and I called him Mike. And I said, "Hey, Mike, nice to meet you." And Una said, "What did you call him?" I said, "Mike." She goes, "How'd you know that's his name?" Well, I had to do a lot of digging, but his name was Mike Thompson. And I don't know why that impressed Una, but Mike was fascinated by the fact that I would even take the time to look up his first name. And so Doc and I became friends. We talked about 2.5 hours that day. Cubby, who was not quite 2 at the time, was running around, drawing on things and being shy at first and just being a little boy. And so we parted ways, and I think 2 weeks later or so, Doc and I got together and had coffee again. And this time we talked for hours, and we discussed, oh my gosh, I don't know how many things. His brother's an engineer, and we spoke about rooftop gardening, where there are stores in Europe, and I believe they're coupling in the United States. As a matter of fact, I know there are a few in the United States where they're growing produce on the rooftop and then selling it in the restaurant or in the grocery store. Talk about field to table literally within a matter of moments, because as you may or may not know, and I've preached about on the show, the moment that anything is harvested, it starts to lose its freshness, its quality, the sugar content, the flavor starts to deplete. And most vegetables, a lot of things like tomatoes and citrus especially, are packer, right? They're bred for shipping long distances, and then are many times ripened on site or regionally, and then shipped out and dispersed there. So we spoke about this, and how could we advocate for food, this food quality, but not necessarily be against conventional farming. And what if we could do vertical growing walls, right? So I don't know if you can see when the camera switches angles here in a minute, you'll see there's this wall of panels over here. But each panel would represent a growing block for vegetables, right? And these walls would be segmented, and they go all the way to the roof of the store. But what if you could, each time that you harvested the entire bottom row of something, all the panels shifted down one, a new row of panels appeared, and they planted in those, and then the wall would just shift down every row, every time the row was harvested, and whether it would be tomatoes on the vine. And so you can't quite see, you can kind of see the panels over here if you're looking this direction to the wall. I know you're looking from this camera, so it would be one block at a time, but several blocks wide, if not 50 blocks wide. But you get one vegetable at a time that you would grow in store seasonally, and that could be harvested in there to share. And of course, I'm not pointing the right way now when I look at myself on camera. That's funny. So we had all these wild ideas, and one of the things we spoke about over time was over several meetings, combining food and radio broadcasting. Right? So we had this grandiose plan. It was actually a very cool plan to have a stage built into a restaurant, just a small raised platform, and in a corner with a glass wall, right? So you could see in, see out, but basically a broadcasting booth, which could be used for a live broadcast for, say, a regional radio host show, and then that stage would act as a public forum, because what we noticed is in a lot of these smaller towns and large towns, I lived in Cypress, Texas area for a long time outside of Houston. There's no town square. There's no central area for people to congregate, right? So there's no real feeling of community in a lot of cases, except within your neighborhood. And so we'd spoke about this. How do you recreate the downtown? Bentonville, fortunately, there's several organizations. One, Downtown Bentonville Inc. Incorporated, DBI. They've done a great job of utilizing the downtown Bentonville area and developing these wonderful community events which gather crowds, large crowds. And they have a amazing farmers market. They do all sorts of bike rides, and there's the squirrel cook-off with the world champion squirrel cook-off that Joe Wilson hosts, and so there's just all these wonderful things that they do. But on top of that, there's the rope swing group, which is one of the or maybe both of the Walton grandsons, Tom and Stuart, and a number of Rob Apple and all these other people that are part of this wonderful organization. They've tasked themselves with redeveloping these downtown areas in small or smallish rural communities, and they're spreading out from Bentonville, and they're going all across, regionally and then nationally, to help these communities redevelop their downtown areas and flourish again. So we spoke about that. How do you build this nationwide network of food and information / broadcasting centers, which would all tie in together? It was a very fascinating conversation, and it was a big dream. So a few weeks after that, that we'd been having this conversation for about a month, maybe 5 weeks, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come on the show?" His partner Skip Lacombe had departed the show, and he was broadcasting most of the time from Bentonville, streaming into the Blaze, and then occasionally he would travel down the Blaze a few days a week, and he would do a show there live, and then he'd come back and broadcast from the home. And he and Skip had been doing the show from the home for several years, I believe. Anyway, so I went out, sure. I'm like, yeah, so what do I do? He goes, show up on Wednesday or Tuesday, whatever day it was. Show up at this time, 6:30, I believe it was. And because this broadcast was 5 to 8 Central, he goes, show up and we'll talk about food. We'll just give the listeners a break from politics. And I was like, okay, cool. He goes, well, think of a couple stories and send them to me, and we'll discuss them, and we'll just talk about it on air. So we did that. And I'm running out of time here, so I need to hurry up. So we did that for a couple of times from his house. And then he said, I eventually, shortly after that, moved back to Houston, and he came down to Dallas full time to broadcast from the studios in Irving. And so he was like, hey, why don't you just start calling in weekly? And this was several months later. I actually did an hour of live television. He sat in for Glenn Beck, and the day before Thanksgiving, 2016. And I did the full, out of the 3-hour show, I think I did a 1-hour segment, almost a full hour, which was like 40 or 48 minutes. And it was fantastic. It was like alternative ideas for Thanksgiving if you don't eat turkey or are tired of turkey or just wanted something different. I think I did a lobster stuffed tenderloin, which he tried to recreate, which was good. It wasn't mine, but he did a good job. And, but it was a fun friendship which was developing, and he invited me to be a regular weekly contributor. Oop. Don't want to throw my favorite book here. That is The Food Lover's Companion, by the way. Give them a plug if you've never seen it and never used it. Anyway, so we developed this friendship, and every week I would either call in or I would drive up to Bentonville or up to Dallas the night before, stay that day, because I was on early, and then come back in the afternoon. After the show, what we would do is we would talk. We would talk for a long time about what we wanted to do. And his ideas about radio broadcasting and that genre, that his particular political genre of broadcasting, and how it was evolving, and he really foresaw what the future should be, and he was devoted to making that happen. Along the lines, I had a crazy idea as I started doing this other cooking show on another format, actually on Dash Radio. I'll just tell you, it was a cannabis cooking show for a show called Purple Haze is the channel, and so I don't cook with cannabis very often. I actually don't consume cannabis so very often. I'll put that moniker in there. But anyway, we started talking about. I had this crazy idea to do a 24-hour food talk radio channel, and he agreed it would be a good idea. He thought, why not do two? The Mojo 50 was born. Spoony was born. I launched first on the Dash platform, and then all of a sudden both channels were up quickly on iHeartRadio, and it was interesting because it was a lot of replay. We did not have a lot of shows. We have some very loyal people who started with us, the Soulman of the High South, Case DeGuero, and Stephen Brooks out of Northwest Arkansas, Bentonville specifically. There was Doc had his show, mine. Whom else do we have there? Elisa Shakespeare with No Butts Too Big. Gwen Rich with The Rich Solution, a healthful lifestyle show. Way to Overcome Cancer, which she has done, or at least to extend the opportunity for life. And I know I'm missing somebody there. There's a couple I'm missing. Paul Petiti, who is actually Doc's wife's co-anchor, one of the anchors at 4029 up there. He has Festa Italiano, and there's
Talk for Health.
Food Talk for Health. Tanya King and Tonya. Tonya is a fantastic voiceover, a voice actress, and also great interviewer of people that are making great advancements in health through diet in the industry. And so I think that pretty much covers it. And we got a couple other people have come on since then, and a bunch more coming up. But anyway, that's how we launched. And tragically, again, we lost Doc the other day to an Amtrak train. And I made the joke. Matt Locke on the other channel stole my thunder, but Doc hated Amtrak, and so they're like, of course he was gotten by someone he potty mouthed all the time. But I made the joke in the control booth, or in with Matt, and then I left for a minute and I went back, that it was probably full of AT&T executives on their way to that train was bound for Chicago, that they were on their way to Chicago for an executive board meeting or something like that. So he used that. I'm glad he did, because it got some laughs. But anyway, Doc may not be with us physically, but he is with us in spirit, and we're going to carry this on. And we have a lot of wonderful things happening. I know we've been a little sparse for content lately, fresh content, and I appreciate those who have listened religiously and or at least devotedly. But we have a couple of really cool people coming up, and one that has already started, Trey Chapman. He has an amazing show. He's been doing this 10 years. He had 2.1 million video views last year on Trey's Chowdown. Now he's doing Trey's Chowdown live right here from the Spoony studio at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, and you figure out the other time zones. He goes on live Fridays. I actually run the board, so if his show goes a little wonky from an audio or video perspective, you can blame Chef Patrick for that. Then, of course, my show, we have the Food Biz Pro show. That is daily, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern. I will be taking over Doc's hour, which was the 1 to 2 p.m. Local, the 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern show time, and I'm going to keep it. It will still be called Doc's House of Flapjacks, but it will be a little more geared towards some of the stuff Doc did in the past, his lists, his cerebral dissection of the food service industry. But it's going to be primarily about innovators and entrepreneurs in the food service sector, and to give them a launching pad, a voice, a platform to share their passion for food. So all the other hourly shows are staying as zero. Elisa Shakespeare soon will be going to daily with No Butts Too Big. On top of that, Cody Stortz, he has a great podcast. He's out of Orange County, great chef, been around a long time. It's called Reckless, and he's a chef to watch. He's very boisterous, got a great voice. Deja and Kelly from They are coming on, they've been on the show before. They are coming up with a weekly podcast called Whole Body Optimization. They're from Le Spa Fit here in Colleyville. Mark Conway, formerly of Kitchen Ambush, who was also at the show with me about a week and a half ago up in Connecticut. He's going to be coming on with a daily show. That's launching next week sometime, I believe. We have Rob Carson. He's been a longtime radio guy, 7-8 years. He's been actually a writer, a political satirist for guys like Rush Limbaugh for a long time. He launches next week. John Chervignac, who's a good friend of mine, Northwest Arkansas, he's doing one. Pardon My Fork, which is up on Podbean right now. He's, I believe, Andy Hayes, he's going to be coming online. Chef Plum, I'm going to put you to task. Man, he's a badass. He works on the East Coast. He's out of Virginia. He's up in Connecticut now doing all sorts of good stuff on the East Coast. He's been on Food Network over and over. He's coming on. Randy White, I'm trying to convince him. He's looking for the time. He's a local guy that does live fire culinary, does some really cool stuff, and he is a badass guy from the World Fruit Championships. And man, I got a bunch of other people that are coming on. Anyway, it's going to be really fun. Hang tight, folks. We're going ballistic. Doc, we're taking you to the stratosphere with us, and we're doing this all for you and your beautiful children. So, and of course, we'd like to make some money as we go forward as well. But anyway, Chef Patrick Mosher, I'm going to sign off here in a few seconds. Thank you all so much. Again, please go to GoFundMe /DocThompson.com/Doc Thompson. It's Doc-Thompson, by the way. And let's take care of them. All right. No worries for them going in the future. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Chef Patrick Mosher, the Food Biz Pro. Ciao for now. We'll see you tomorrow.